Thank you.
Tánaiste, research published by the British Medical Journal confirmed that this state has one of the highest increases in death by suicide directly related to the recession. As we all know, the enormous pressure of household and mortgage debt has become literally unbearable for many families, and I think this was highlighted very tragically by the death of former Priory Hall resident Fiachra Daly. Tánaiste, you promised personally to make the mortgage crisis a priority, yet your government is willing to allow the banks to set the agenda, and the number of families in mortgage distress has doubled on your watch. And of course the response of the banks has been to issue 15,000 repossession letters to struggling families. We've also recently heard very worrying statements from a number of personal insolvency practitioners on the airwaves. So I have three questions for you on this subject, Tánaiste. On Priory Hall specifically, will your government force the banks to wipe out the outstanding mortgages and allow the former residents to hand back their keys? Will you give these families a fresh start? On the broader issue of mortgages, can you guarantee that no family will be denied access to a personal insolvency practitioner because of their inability to pay upfront fees in the order of €5,000 or €7,000? And finally, will you guarantee that no family will be excluded from the insolvency process because of a refusal of the banks to engage with the insolvency practitioners because that family simply holds one single mortgage?
Thank you.
Councillor, three questions. First of all, in relation to Priory Hall, the Minister for the Environment has initiated a process which, within a very short period of time, will work up solutions with all of the stakeholders involved. That process has actually started this morning, and Minister Hogan expects to have a report shortly of that. So the Priory Hall issue is being dealt with, and it's being dealt with quite quickly by government, and I hope that there will be a resolution to that problem within a short period of time. Secondly, this government has made the mortgage crisis a priority. That's why we changed the law to introduce personal insolvency legislation. That's why we have brought in for the first time non-judicial debt settlement arrangements, and why we have put in place the personal insolvency service, which has just begun work. There is progress being made in this area. The Personal Insolvency Act, as I've said, was signed into law at the end of last year. The Personal Insolvency Service was formally launched on the 1st of March. The Central Bank has set targets requiring the main mortgage lenders to offer durable solutions to mortgage holders over 90 days in arrears. The revised Code of Conduct on mortgage arrears was published by the Central Bank in June, and the Department of Finance continues to engage with lenders. The Central Bank end of June mortgage data indicates that the stock of personal mortgage restructures was around 79,000 at that stage. 53% of these restructured accounts are not in arrears, which indicates that the banks are taking some early measures to address mortgage difficulty. I welcome the fact that the Central Bank has also stated that over 76% of the restructured mortgages were deemed to be meeting the terms of their agreement. As indicated previously, the Department of Finance has more recent data from the main banks, and it indicates that at the end of July, around 1,800 split mortgages were in place. 12,600 accounts had a term extension restructure, and a further 12,000 accounts had their arrears capitalised. So progress is being made on the issue of mortgage restructuring. The whole purpose of the legislation and the means that are put in place is that every family that has a mortgage difficulty will have access to this process and to this system. The government will keep very close monitoring on what is happening in practice, because the outcome that we want to achieve is that one by one the households who are in mortgage arrears and in mortgage difficulty get their mortgage problem resolved using the processes that have now been put in place, which will enable people to put their mortgage crisis behind them and to get on with the rest of their life.
Thank you. Deputy McDonald.
Well, you're demonstrating remarkable faith in those very banks that, as I said initially, issued 15,000 repossession legal letters to families, and that they believe to be a durable and sustainable solution for those families. But however, the people of Priory Hall have heard all of the terms of process and stakeholders and solutions and government commitments before. What we need to know is that these people will have the slate wiped clean, that after 2 torturous years and the tragedy therein, that they will have a real opportunity to move on with their lives. So tell us, please, is that option of the wiping of the slate the necessary solution being considered? And on the personal insolvency issue, Tánaiste, you gave us an account of the past and the passage of the legislation. But the difficulty is this. We have heard from the horse's mouth, as it were, from personal insolvency practitioners, that upfront fees in the order of perhaps €5,000 or €7,000 will be required to get their services. You need to tell us, you need to tell the public that that's not going to happen, that people won't be barred from this process because of exorbitant fees of that order. And secondly, again, from personal insolvency practitioners, they have said publicly that the banks are already telling them that they will not deal with them on the basis of single mortgage holders. Now, you've let the banks away with lots. We all know that they were allowed historically and in contemporary terms to run riot and that they hold all of the cards. But surely you have something to say when those professionals who will run the service say in public that the banks are already telling them that those families who have a single mortgage, and bear in mind they represent the bulk of people in distress, that they won't even deal with the personal insolvency practitioners to resolve their debt issues. The legislation is all very well and good, Tánaiste, but that doesn't mean that your job is done. We have to be absolutely sure that neither because of excessive fees or because of an arrogant stance by the banks that people will find themselves on the wrong end of this. And I want assurances from you today that you will make sure that on the issue of fees and the banks playing ball, that you will ensure that those things are dealt with and dealt with adequately.
First of all, in Priory Hall, the Priory Hall issue is being dealt with. And as I've said, the process that has been put in place is intended to be activated quickly. I'm not going to prejudge the outcome of that. It is going to be dealt with quickly. The people in Priory Hall have waited a very long time. I know that there were judicial issues and there were legal issues and so on and so forth for a period of time. The problems in Priory Hall are being dealt with and there will be an outcome to that without undue delay. Secondly, in relation to the mortgage issue, the reason that we introduced the legislation, the reason that we established the Personal Insolvency Service, the reason that we put in place the various methods for non-judicial debt settlement is so that the mortgage problems and arrears problems that many households and many families have in this country will be resolved. Nobody is going to be barred from that process. Exorbitant fees or attitudes by banks or attitudes by professionals or anybody else is not going to debar anybody from access to that process. We want our objective has always been to put in place the pathway and the architecture which would enable households and enable families to secure a settlement of their mortgage arrears difficulties with their financial institution. That has to be done on an individual, case-by-case basis. Progress is being made on it. We are going to continue to monitor it because at the end of the day, they absolutely.
Sorry,
let me tell them publicly. The banks, we want the issue of mortgage arrears with households resolved, and we don't want any issue of attitude or arrogance or any other term that you want to put on it. We want this problem solved. That's why we put in place the legislation. That's why we put in place the personal insolvency service. That is also why it was included in the recapitalisation of the banks at the time. So let nobody be in any doubt. Our determination as a government, we have put in place now the legislation, the method, the personal insolvency service for people to be able to resolve their mortgage difficulties, and the banks and everybody else need to get on with that. And the central bank has set targets for that, and we're going to monitor it month by month until the problem is fully resolved.